Hey everybody, John from Movie Burners here, back with another movie review, and today I'm going to be discussing the 2017 released Atomic Blonde. So when I discovered that David Leitch, the man behind John Wick, had a new film out, I was naturally intrigued and excited to go and give it a watch. Now, I absolutely loved John Wick. Admittedly, that was a fairly superficial film too, but a star showing from Keanu Reeves and some insanely good action scenes and choreography, plus a good old tale of revenge turned what could have been an average affair into a modern cult classic. And Atomic Blonde, Leitch's latest creation, is a spy thriller set in the 1980s. And for me it ultimately falls flat on its face in the plot department. Despite sharing many of the positive characteristics with the aforementioned John Wick, it becomes needlessly convoluted, difficult to follow, and was ultimately underwhelming for me as a result. As I said, it's set in 1989 in Berlin, a city which at that stage is still very much divided, with murderous Russian KGB members running around nilly-willy with seeming immunity and killing anything that moves, which is precisely how the film kicks off. An MI6 agent by the name of Paul Gascoigne gets himself caught and then executed in rather brutal fashion, which isn't the best of news for the British intelligence. Why? Well, because he was carrying a stowing list of the whereabouts of every intelligence asset they have. This of course sets alarm bells ringing, and they are immediately wanting to reclaim the precious item, deploying the talents of Lorraine Broughton, played by Charlize Theron, a top MI6 field agent who doesn't mess around in her rather feverish attempts to resolve the situation. She teams up with the eccentric feral Berlin station chief David Percival, played by James McAvoy, a schemer of a man who appears to have real issues with authority and also a propensity for lying at every turn. Now, that sounds like a fairly simple story, and if only it could have stayed that way, but everything that's told throughout the course of the film is done so via an interrogation room, with Lorraine reporting her escapades to her superiors, chief of whom being Emmett Cursfield, played by John Goodman. Now, what troubled me most perhaps is that it's supposed to be a spy thriller, and yet it never once had me on edge, excited for what was happening, nor was there any real spy elements within it. A James Bond female edition it certainly isn't, and the film closely follows Lorraine and her growing suspicions of Percival's role in things. Her original mission of retrieving the list and assassinating Satchel, a double agent who's been selling information to the Russians, soon becomes far too complicated, and this isn't helped with the introduction of Daphne Lascelles, played by Sophia Boutella, a French undercover agent that rather bizarrely and needlessly becomes Broughton's lover after a mere 5 or so minutes on the screen. Now, the film doesn't do a good enough job of giving any of its characters a backstory or implanting any real logic behind their actions. Broughton's in particular falls foul of this idiocy. She's supposed to be undercover, but regularly saunters into clubs full of KGB members just waiting to kill her. Like I say, she soon suspects Percival of being the leak, and she pretty much has her suspicions confirmed following an ambush, and yet she still works with him to try and smuggle Spyglass, a Stasi defector responsible for stealing the list, into West Berlin. This ends is exactly as you'd expect, and it makes zero sense from any logical perspective. It does lead to the best scene in the entire film, however, when both Lorraine and Spyglass end up cornered within a building and she single-handedly takes out half a dozen or so KGB members. That scene was beautifully handled. It flowed seamlessly in what looked like one continuous shot, and I have to say it was pretty damn tremendous on the eyes. Most of the choreography in this was spectacular, incidentally, as you'd expect from the man who brought you John Wick, and the visuals were incredible. Now, I was born in '89 myself, so I can't really speak for what the 80s were like, but the film does seem to capture the mood of that decade pretty perfectly, with a fantastic soundtrack and very zany, neon-heavy visuals, and that is certainly one area of Atomic Blonde that I can't criticise. I also can't really criticise the performances either. Charlize Theron was superb as Broughton. She is an excellent actress, and as Mad Max showed, she's more than capable of excelling in physically exerting action roles. She's become a something of a bona fide action hero. Much of the film was fixated on her character, often uncomfortably close at times, but she did carry the film with ease. James McAvoy didn't have quite as much screen time comparatively, but the time he did have was utilised pretty well, and he was quite a humorous character with frequent bursts of passive aggression and some swearing-fueled rants. There was also some darkness in his character, especially towards the end, that was excellently conveyed by the Scotsman, and anybody that's seen Split last year as well will attest to how well he pulls that particular trait off. Butella was fine, she didn't have much to work with, and she did okay. John Goodman likewise did okay in what was a relative cameo role. Just about every other character, including the unmemorable villain Bremovich played by Roland Moller, were pretty much sideshows. Ultimately, the film was let down by poor character development and a less than compelling story that became mucky, overly convoluted, and damn right confusing in the middle. Leach would have been much better served just going down the trusted John Wick route with this one, i.e. an enjoyable, simplistic action flick with slick visuals and choreography. I felt he maybe get caught between doing that and perhaps getting overly smart with the plot, and it just didn't work for me. It may have done for others, I don't know. There was positives in there, but in the end it just felt like a fairly hollow film under these stylish visuals, and I'll be giving it a 2.5 out of 5. Remember guys, if you're enjoying the content we're putting out, then be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and iTunes, and give us a little follow on Facebook at Movie Burner Entertainment and on Twitter at Movie Burners. You can also catch up with all the latest reviews we're putting out at the Movie Burner blog on movieburnerentertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.